Tonight we continue our series of interviews with candidates in this year's city election. Tonight we meet one of the 4 candidates on the ballot for city councilor in Allston-Brighton. That's District 9. We'd like to welcome Ben Narodick. Thank you very much for being with us, Ben.
Nice meeting you again.
Thank you for coming. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up becoming a candidate.
Well, I like to consider myself a long-time Allston resident. I just never lived here, and I came here for law school, and I just really fell in love with the place, and it really became a way of, I really quickly discovered that if I really loved the community and if this was really a place that I wanted to establish myself and establish a family eventually, that part of that is contributing. Part of that responsibility is improving that community. And I started looking around and I was talking to a lot of my friends. I really found that a lot of us had the same issues. A lot of us had housing problems, whether that was a landlord or a realtor or some other bad experience. Some of us were really concerned about businesses in Allston-Brighton. A lot of them are leaving. A lot of the districts have become, they aren't necessarily destinations right now that people want to go to in the day and in the evening. And a lot of people are really concerned about the MBTA out there. So there's a lot of concerns that a lot of people had that really could be addressed from a very large macro basis, and it was one of those things where people started kind of kicking the idea around, and before I knew it, people were putting together a campaign for me, and here I am, and it's been a really great experience so far.
This is a district that could have several housing problems, but talk about the one that maybe concerns you the most and what you think you can do about it.
I think the biggest problem right now is absentee landlords, and what happens is you have a lot of landlords who invest in large amounts of property in Allston-Brighton, and then they don't live in the community. They don't live in Allston, they don't live in Brighton, they don't live in their buildings. They end up living, miles away, not even the city of Boston. And what happens is it becomes very hard to fix problems that emerge in these buildings. You often have overpopulated apartments. You have rodent issues, insect issues. And the residents in these buildings that are often, low income, immigrants, students, they are in these conditions and they can't do anything about it either, and then the neighbors get upset. And you get all this conflict that's really getting started by a bunch of people that are profiting from our neighborhood and not really taking responsibility for their actions. So one of the things I would do to start off is to make sure that that not only our landlords have local agents on site to make sure that they can address these problems, but also that realtors need to follow up on these landlords. Realtors should not be allowed to be licensed in the city if they're going to be putting our residents in substandard housing.
This has been some kind of a thing that's been tough to enforce. I know Mike Ross in his district, he was concerned about students piling on inside apartments, and you want to restrict that, but isn't it difficult to restrict?
Well, it's very difficult to restrict, and the first problem is it's not a student problem. I know Mike Ross and Mark Siama like to talk about this as a student issue, but it's not a student issue. It's what happens when you have when you get any large group of people into a higher density area than they can't support. So I know Mike Ross originally was thinking about doing was thinking about cracking down on over-density in apartments, and now he's talking about finding realtors. I feel like he's focusing on the students, and they're the victims here. Students aren't moving to Allston and Brighton and saying, I want to live 6 in a building that's full of insects, that's full of mice, and I want to get gorged for it. I mean, this isn't what anyone's looking for. So I think it's a matter of really looking at it from the institutional side, looking at it from the landlords that continue to be here year after year and keep proliferating this, and looking at the realtors that have really made a cottage industry, not just exploiting students, but other young people, non-students, other low-income families, other immigrant families, people that are English as a second language. This is an issue that transcends students, and the more we think about it as a student issue, the more divisive the problem becomes.
Judging by one of your other forum or debate appearances, you're concerned about the city budget. It's been growing. This is a tough time economically. So what would you like to see done differently?
Well, yeah. As you know, as you mentioned, the budget this year is $2.39 billion, and that's an increase of over 16% over the last 4 years, over one of the worst economies in a generation. And we have a number of programs that are important that we need to preserve, like police and fire and education. But the fastest growing budget items are health insurance and transportation for city employees. And I don't think that
transportation?
Transportation, just as far as getting employees from one location to the other. And they're not using MBTA, they're not using the resources that we have in the city that every other resident uses. So what I would recommend is we can really streamline these operations without losing one single job in City Hall. It's really a matter of working smarter and not harder. And the same thing with the budget. I think we can be doing a lot more with a lot less. And it's really a matter of bringing someone in that doesn't have the political baggage, that doesn't have the established requirements, and really coming in and bringing a fresh perspective to the situation.
This is a district that is full of institutional expansion, that is college expansion dilemmas. One of the more recent, Harvard moving into North Allston, what to do about Charlesview apartments, whether you have too many people who are concentrated in one area for affordable and another area for upscale housing. Would you do anything differently in that plan than what's out there right now?
I mean, absolutely. You have the Harvard issue in Lower Allston, and you also have the Boston College expansion in Brighton. And when Mark Sioma ran 2 years ago, he campaigned on certain guarantees that he wouldn't allow, for example, Boston College to build on the monastery land. And then just a few months ago, he sat on a Boston Zoning Commission planning board and approved a plan that included construction on that monastery ground.
Putting the dorm on the Brighton campus, as they call it, I guess.
Exactly. And the reality of the matter is, it's going to take a city councilor who is engaged, not just on the city level, but going to community groups more often, really keeping in contact, going door to door. And of the 4 candidates in this field, I'm the only person that has the experience working with city officials, university officials, student officials, and I really feel like I have the best opportunity to really find a middle ground there.
So then you want to find a middle ground, or you say you would absolutely be against having a dorm in that new campus?
Oh, I'm absolutely against the dorm on the Brighton campus, and there are definitely some very serious concerns that I have with the BC Institutional Master Plan.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Candidate for Boston City Council in Allston-Brighton, District 9, Ben Narodick. In a moment, we'll talk about a series of candidate forums.
Okay, that's good.
Great. Thank you very much for coming.